Alaska is for many a little-known place that recently received wide publicity in connection with political news. But, as if by evil intent literally just days ago, Alaska shuddered from a series of catastrophic events that forced scientists around the world to sound the alarm. Early in the morning, a massive landslide in the South Sawyer Glacier area spawned a tsunami that crashed onto the coast with a roar instantly stripping entire slopes of century-old trees. A few days later, Alaska's governor was forced to declare a state of emergency. Mendenhall Glacier threatens to flood the state capital Juneau with a 5-meter wave. Thousands of residents received evacuation orders. The climax was an earthquake of magnitude 7.3 that made the earth literally jump. Eyewitness videos show parked cars bouncing on asphalt, while people panic and run from houses. Tsunami sirens wailed along the entire coast. And as if nature decided to stage a perfect storm, a cloud of volcanic ash from a Russian volcano, eruption in Kamchatka hung over Alaska. On August 13th, airlines began massively canceling flights. But what really frightened scientists is that an international group of geophysicists discovered under Alaska's waters a fault 150 kilometers long, capable of generating a tsunami 16 times more powerful than what we've seen recently. And most terrifying scientists give this catastrophe only 12 months. Satellites have already recorded formation of a gigantic landslide in Prince William Sound. What I will tell you today may seem like fiction, but every fact is confirmed by scientific research. Every number is real. So, what is happening in this region now? What events turned Alaska into the most dangerous place on Earth? And why does what happens in this remote corner of the planet concern each of us? This is a place where nature seemingly tests scenarios of natural catastrophes. Territory the size of 2 Frances, where bears are encountered more often than people, and earthquakes occur literally every day. A place where mountains grow before your eyes, glaciers collapse into the ocean, and beneath the ground hides one of the planet's most dangerous faults. Welcome to Alaska, America's last frontier, which nature turned into a testing ground for the planet's most dangerous forces. Alaska is not just the largest U.S. state. It is 1.7 million square kilometers of absolute chaos where only 740,000 people live. For comparison, there are more than 140,000 bears here. The chance of meeting a bear is 1 in 5, but bears are the lesser of problems. The real threat hides elsewhere. More than 100 active volcanoes are located here, and 11% of all world earthquakes occur. 3 of 8 most powerful earthquakes in human history happened precisely here. But in recent years, something has changed. Alaska seems to have awakened from long hibernation. August 2025 became a month that state residents will remember for long. Early in the morning, when most people were still sleeping, something occurred in the South Sawyer Glacier area that scientists called the largest landslide tsunami in Alaska in the last 10 years. Tens of millions of cubic meters of rock suddenly collapsed into the fjord. Waves rushed through the bay at furious speeds, sweeping everything in their path. Entire slopes covered with ancient trees turned into bare ground in seconds. And this, just 96 kilometers from the state capital Juneau. But the landslide turned out to be only a prelude to real nightmare. Literally a few days later, Juneau residents had to face another threat approaching flood from melting Mendenhall Glacier. Authorities declared evacuation, warning that water level could reach 5 m. The state governor declared emergency regime. And this still wasn't everything. Most terrible was ahead. On July 16, 2025, the ground under Alaska shuddered from a powerful earthquake of magnitude 7.3. The epicenter was located only 87 kilometers from Sandpoint Settlement. Thousands of people panicked and ran from houses, seeing parked cars literally jumping on asphalt from underground tremors. Authorities declared evacuation of coastal areas. 2 hours later, tsunami threat was lifted, but earthquakes didn't stop. Next came a tremor of magnitude 5.7, then another. Scientists warned aftershocks could continue for weeks. These events forced scientists to look at Alaska in a new way. It turns out what's happening here now is not coincidence. To understand what's happening in Alaska, we need to look into the past. And this region's past is simply terrifying. On March 27, 1964, on Good Friday, when people were preparing for Easter, something happened. At 5:36 p.m. local time, Earth shuddered from a blow of such power that it was felt even in Florida, 4,000 kilometers from the epicenter. Magnitude was 9.2. This was the second strongest earthquake in human history. Earth literally turned over. In some places, surface rose 9 SEM, in others it collapsed 2.5 mil. An area of 250,000 square kilometers the size of Great Britain was deformed by one blow. Anchorage, the state's largest city, turned into ruins. But most terrible began afterward. The earthquake spawned tsunami up to 67 m high. This is the height of a 20-story building. Waves rushed through bays at furious speed, erasing entire settlements from the face of Earth. What really amazes is waves reached California, Oregon, even Japan and Antarctica. Ocean turned into a giant killer, knowing no borders. Material damage amounted to more than $2 billion in modern figures. But numbers don't convey the true scale of catastrophe. People understood they live on a powder keg. After 1964, scientists began studying Alaska more closely, and what they discovered made them shudder. It turned out such powerful earthquakes occur here regularly, approximately once every 600 years. But this is average. In reality, intervals can be 100 years. The fact is, Alaska is located in the planet's most dangerous place, where two giant lithospheric plates meet. Pacific Plate, the size of an entire continent, slowly crawls north at 5 to 7 centimeters per year. This plate collides with North American Plate and begins diving under it in a process scientists call subduction. Precisely here in the collision zone, the planet's most powerful earthquakes are born, and such places on Earth number in thousands. Every year pressure builds. Statistics are simply frightening. 7 of 10 largest earthquakes in U.S. history occurred precisely in Alaska. Every year, about 6 earthquakes of magnitude 6 to 7 occur here. Once every 13 years, most powerful tremor with magnitude above 8 occurs. But here's what's surprising. Until recently, scientists thought they could predict where exactly the next catastrophe would occur. They divided subduction zones into dangerous and relatively safe based on how plates behave. If plate movement was uniform, the zone was considered safe. If plates periodically locked, dangerous. And then happened what overturned all ideas about seismic safety. On March 11, 2011, off Japan's shores, in a zone considered relatively safe, an earthquake of magnitude 9 occurred. Tsunami 40 m high crashed onto the coast. 3 nuclear reactors at Fukushima nuclear plant were destroyed. This was catastrophe no one expected. Tohoku zone was considered safe precisely because plates there moved uniformly. But it turned out earthquake occurred not along main fault between plates, but along additional steep normal fault that branched from main fault upward into continental plate body. Japanese tragedy forced scientists to reconsider their views on seismic danger. And when they began studying other subduction zones, considering new knowledge, frightening things emerged. A group of international geophysicists went to Shumagen Island's remote archipelago, in eastern part of Aleutian Chain, 1,000 kilometers from Anchorage in southern Alaska. This area was long considered calm. Yes, earthquakes occurred here, but relatively weak. Large tsunamis hadn't been observed for more than 2 centuries. Using special equipment, scientists began X-raying seafloor with ultrasound. What they saw on monitors made them go cold. Underwater at 30-kilometer depth hid gigantic fault. Steep normal fault, 150-kilometer long, that branched from main boundary between Pacific and North American plates and went upward into continental plate body. Exactly same structure as in Tohoku zone off Japan's shores. On seafloor surface, this fault manifested only as 5-meter scarp. It would seem trifle against oceanic depths, but data analysis showed fault is active, constant movements occur along it. Then scientists understood they found sleeping giant. Wedge-shaped fragment of continental plate size of small state is separated from main plate by this fault. And at any moment, this fragment could be squeezed upward, causing sharp seafloor rise and tsunami formation. Moreover, it turned out only documented tsunami in this area, 10-meter wave in 1786, described in chronicles of first Russian settlers, was most likely caused precisely by movement along this fault. But most terrible discovery lay ahead. Having studied fault structure in more detail, Geophysicists concluded displacement along it could cause not only local tsunami, but trans-Pacific scale wave. That is tsunami that would reach shores of California, Japan, and even Australia. And this is only one fault of many. Further research showed that along entire Alaska coast, similar structures are hidden dozens, possibly hundreds of potentially dangerous faults, whose existence no one even suspected. But why didn't scientists notice them for so long? Answer turned out simple and simultaneously frightening. Before Japanese catastrophe of 2011, no one knew what to look for. It was thought only main boundaries between plates presented danger. Additional faults received no attention. Moreover, seafloor research is extremely expensive and complex. Special vessels are needed, most complex equipment, months of work in open ocean. Much easier was to limit oneself to land seismic stations that record only large events. But precisely Japanese tragedy forced priority reconsideration. It became clear need to study not only main faults, but entire crack system in Earth's crust. And more scientists studied more, they were horrified. It turned out Denali Tochunda Fault, stretching across all Alaska, is comparable in size to famous San Andreas Fault in California, but it moves much faster. This is one of planet's fastest moving faults. In 2002, displacement of magnitude 7.9 occurred along it, resulting in mountain rising 457 m. But this still isn't everything. Climate changes make situation even more dangerous. Professor Bill McGuire from University College London discovered direct connection between glacier melting and seismic activity growth. Over last 100 years, some Alaska ice fields lost up to a kilometer in height. This led to sharp load reduction on Earth's crust. And when pressure from above decreases, crust begins rising and cracking like ice on river during spring ice drift. From 2010 to 2015, Alaska registered more than 150,000 earthquakes. 31 of them had magnitude above 6. And if you look at statistics of powerful earthquakes with magnitude from 7, they began occurring practically annually since 1999. But real madness begins when underground tremors spawn insanely sized tsunamis. And here, Alaska has absolute world record, highest wave in human history. On July 9, 1958 at night in Lituya Bay, occurred what can be called apocalypse. Earthquake of magnitude 7.8 brought down 90 million tons of rock into water from height of almost a kilometer. What happened next surpasses most fantastic disaster films. Water shot up to height of 524 m. Eyewitnesses on ships in bay told of first hearing sound of powerful explosion, then feeling intense shaking, and then huge water wall rose before them, shooting higher than mountains. Some boats' waves simply threw over island into open sea. When elements calmed, bay changed beyond recognition. About 4 square kilometers of forest were cut and crushed by waves. No plants or soil remained on shores, only bare rock. Consequences of this tsunami are visible from space to this day. It turned out Lituya is perfect trap for megatsunami. Narrow fjord, steep walls, special seafloor, geometry, and fault running directly through bay. All this turns place into natural catapult for water, and such places in Alaska are numerous. In 2015 at Tan Fjord, gigantic block weighing 163 million tons broke off from cliff and crashed into sea, causing 180-meter wave. Fortunately, this area is uninhabited, so no one suffered. But there are places where similar catastrophes could lead to real tragedy, and main one is Anchorage, Alaska's largest city. For many years, residents felt safe. City is located deep in long, shallow Cook Inlet, far from open ocean. Even during Great Earthquake of 1964, tsunami didn't reach city. This created false sense of security. But recently, scientists dispelled these illusions. They conducted computer modeling of that catastrophic earthquake and made terrible discovery. It turned out in 1964, Anchorage was simply incredibly lucky. At moment when tsunami approached city, there was strongest low tide. Water dropped 4 m below average level, and this dampened wave. But if earthquake had occurred during high tide, everything would have been completely different. Computer model showed horrifying picture. 10-meter wave wall crashes onto Anchorage flooding port, through which lion's share of all goods, food and fuel, enters city. most important highway connecting Alaska with rest of America goes underwater. But threat comes not only from earthquakes. Expert Herman Fritz warns of possibility of secondary tsunamis, those caused by landslides. And here climate changes play fatal role. Glacier melting destabilizes mountain slopes. In Prince William Sound, 97 kilometers from Anchorage, huge landslide is forming. Satellite images show that as glacier retreats, increasingly large, rocky scarp forms near it. Scientists calculated if this landslide suddenly crashes into sea, it will release 16 times more sediment and 11 times more energy than landslide in Lituya Bay. This means tsunami, hundreds of meters high, could crash onto Alaska's densely populated areas, and anything could trigger such landslide. Earthquake, heavy rain, abnormal heat. Scientists believe probability of catastrophe in next 20 years is very high. Some give it only 12 months. What's happening now in Alaska has no analogs in human history. Over last 100 years, so much ice melted here that it would be enough to cover entire US territory with layers several meters thick. Some ice fields lost up to a kilometer in height. Scientists record pattern. Faster ice melts, more earthquakes occur. In areas with greatest ice cover, loss of seismic activity increases many times. This is not coincidence, this is direct cause and effect relationship. Every year, glaciers retreat further, exposing ever new unstable sections of mountain slopes. This is precisely why August 2025 events so frighten scientists. Landslide at South Sawyer. Glacier became first warning bell. Flood from Mendenhall Glacier, second earthquake, third. Nature seems to be testing its capabilities, preparing for main blow. Experts agree on one thing. Alaska becomes testing ground for nature's most destructive forces. What happens here today could happen tomorrow in other regions of planet. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel.